Hello everyone, welcome to LPS Digital Conference. First of all, I would like to thank Siegfried for giving me the opportunity to present my research. I will be talking on redefining the image of a city, low vision friendly public spaces. So, my name is Dipali Shirsat. I'm a lighting designer by profession. I was always inspired by the ideology and work of architect Laurie Baker and artist James Turrell, which led me to constantly explore on how design can change the way we experience spaces and the power of storytelling in design. I did my master's in lighting design from KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden, where I started my research at the Lighting Lab in collaboration with Tyrants under the guidance of Lena Perry. And currently, I'm working as a lighting designer at Neolight Global. To begin with the presentation, I would like to give you all a background of my research. I believe every city has its own story to tell. It tells you a story about its beautiful architecture, the culture, the people, and also the public spaces. And I feel these factors are responsible in our experience of a particular place or city. They together define the image of a city that we have. And every city has its own unique image. Well, where also light is a very important element in defining these factors. As you can see in the presentation, light is used in various different ways to express different meanings, where light is used as a medium of celebration in Indian culture, for example, where in public spaces, light is used as a medium to enhance social interaction. And mostly in architecture, light is used as a medium to build a strong identity, and it also helps in defining the skyline. So I feel as lighting designers, we are responsible for developing the city's image, especially during the night. The motivation from the research, I came across this quote by Kevin Lynch, where he states, "What does the city's form actually mean to the people who live there? And what can the city planner do to make the city's image more vivid and memorable to the city dweller?" Where I feel it is not only a responsibility of a city planner, but we as a lighting designer also share the equal responsibility in making the city's image more memorable and enjoyable to the city dweller, especially during the night time. I was also inspired by architect Chris Downey, who is based in San Francisco, and he lost his vision in 2008, but he still practices architecture. He says, "I am without sight, but I'm not without vision." So I came with this one question in my mind, that how do visually impaired people perceive this image of a city? Do they have a different experience than what we have? And how is that image different from our image of a city? And how, as we lighting designers, can bring out an image of a city which is equal to all? So to start my research with, I did my basic study in what exactly is visual impairment, what are the different types of visual impairment, and how this affect people. So the first impression when I talk about my research, that I say that it's on low vision friendly public spaces and it's about visual impairment, the first question that I get is, but like, people are not able to see, right? How can you as a lighting designer design for someone who cannot see? Well, to correct them, there is this, you can see on the right hand side that vision can be divided into two different types. One is low vision and one is blindness, where people with low vision have residual vision and blindness is no perception at all. And low vision can be further divided into mild, moderate, and severe kind of type. So if you see the graph on the left hand side, where I have given a statistical data according to WHO, you can see the percentage of people with low vision is much higher than the people who are blind. So the bottom line is 70 to 80% of the people who are visually impaired can actually see, and certain visual cues can help them navigate their way in a space. So currently 2.2 billion people in the world, which is equivalent to more than a quarter of the world's population, are experiencing visual impairment. And by 2050, the number is expected to triple. And also visual impairment, the risk increases with the increase in age, and especially in the older generation, it is due to macular degeneration. So to give you all an idea about how people with different eye condition perceive their immediate surrounding, here are some pictures where how person who has a cataract or how person who has a glaucoma can perceive an image which is quite different to both of them. So all of these eye conditions, they require a few things in common to have clear view of the surrounding, such as more light, high contrast, large text size, absorptive or prism lenses. And also, even though these people have different needs, certain visual cues can be common to them. And these consist of color, shape, position, orientation, distance, luminance, size, and etc. And the interaction of the person who are visually impaired with as many as of those visual cues can provide a maximum of information to them for wayfinding or to navigate the environment. So these are the pictures from the experiment that I conducted, which is known as the blindfold experiment. So blindfold experiment is majorly a tool which helps in giving me a personal experience on how people who are visually impaired they interact with the built environment. So what I did here was the participants are blindfolded and are then asked to explore the urban setting. So basically, when you remove their sight, it is a form of sensory deprivation, so they concentrate on the remaining senses. And it will somehow open them more to the environment and to the other non-visual aspects of a space. So it can either induce a sense of fear or remove it depending on the person. It is a great way to study human behavior and how we react in a certain setting. And it also helps in answering few of the questions like, if a person cannot see, does it mean they are more open? Or are they more inclined to experiencing new settings, or is just restricting their movement to freely explore a place? So this blindfold experiment was carried out in India with the help of 6 participants, and all were students in the age group of 20 to 25 having normal vision. They were given a background of what the research is all about and how do we go about it. And so the start point and the end point of the journey were marked on the site. The route was not pre-decided. It was totally upon the participants to choose the path and the way they want to navigate around the space. So the observations from the experiment is presented in the graphical format, as you can see on the right-hand side. And these observations were noted taking into consideration 4 main points, which are what are the reference points on the site that led to sensory triggers, which are other than visual, like auditory, olfactory, haptic, and some triggers were also from the past or previous memory. Second, how was the wayfinding process? Third, what were the problems encountered by these participants during the journey? And how, in the entirety, how they overall reacted with the built environment. So if you see the graph, it shows that the haptic sense is kind of more developed in the participants as compared to the other senses. They made use of haptic sense more rather than the olfactory, memory, and the auditory. Where the auditory sensory trigger was kind of used median, and the olfactory was at the lowest point. So a few general observations from the experiment which was noted, where we as a designer can use them while we design lighting for a particular space. So it is very important to note certain reference points in a space which can be identified as supporters or barriers of walking experience. So supporters are those elements on a site which supports your activity and helps you move from point A to point B freely. And barriers are those points in a space which kind of restricts your activity and stops you from going further. Those reference points can further be divided into pleasant or unpleasant nodes. The haptic sense is majorly used in space recognition as compared to the other senses. So this is like a very important point that we can note down. The attributes associated with the haptic sense was mainly in the identification of materials and their different kind of textures, from form recognition and the level differences. Also, one key point that edges, intersection points, and level difference, those can be like the really potential barriers if they are not illuminated properly. For example, in my experiment, one participant only used those intersection points and level differences to kind of navigate his way around the site, which shows a tendency that some people might just want to take a safer route and not get an entire experience of the space. Also, what was noted is stepping down is more difficult than stepping up the stairs due to the shadows cast on the stairs and which was not properly illuminated. The auditory trigger helps in judgment of distance and orientation with respect to the space and people around, giving one the sense of safety. Utter silence can be confusing and may probably discourage to further continue the journey. Like for example, few participants in the experiment, they kind of stopped and moved back because they could not judge what is happening around the city. At one point, they could hear people talking around them. And as they moved further, there was like utter silence around them. So it discouraged them from taking the next point. Few elements are relatable and easy to identify due to the memory attached with particular objects and things, which also has a positive impact in the walking experience. For example, there was an outdoor gym facility on the site. So few of the participants, they easily recognized those outdoor gym facilities by the haptic sense, and they were confident enough to take the further route. Well, in the given site, although olfactory sense was not that much used, but it can be a strong indicator if incorporated properly within the design. And last, irrespective of whether one has clear vision or not, people tend to be curious about unfamiliar routes. And if proper design interventions are made with the help of sensory triggers in a particular space, it can boost confidence of people to take more unfamiliar routes. So the sensory triggers that I noted from the experiment were divided into 4 different kinds. The auditory cues, the haptic cues, the olfactory, and in some cases, the visual cues, they were noted down. And those cues were further assessed on the different attributes of a particular sensory modality. For example, the auditory triggers were further classified into whether it was a natural elements, the surrounding activities, the material recognition, the familiarity of the surrounding, or did it help in judging the distance and orientation. And mostly the haptic cues were in the form of material and texture and form recognition. And the olfactory, although it was limited, certain emotions and certain memory attached to a peculiar smell of an object, people were able to recognize that thing. So this is how one can actually assess a space based on non-visual aspect of a particular space, and then assess what are the attributes related to it which can help you in the design process. The other important parameter when designing for people with visual impairment is to consider contrast. Contrast is a very key factor in deciding the kind of lighting that we propose. Where if you see the chart on the right hand side, top right hand side, where contrast can be basically divided into three different parts: the luminance contrast, value contrast, and the tactile contrast. Where luminance is apparent brightness and how bright an object appears to the human eye. Well, visually impaired people, they are more prone to accidents due to improper interventions due to inappropriate luminance contrast. And this can restrict their movement and wayfinding in a space. Where luminance contrast and chromacity difference, it determines the color contrast. And culture, prior experience, and gender also have an impact on the color preference. For example, red-green contrast is preferred more by females than by males. So when you're designing for a space, all these factors come into picture, as different place will have different needs, and the culture of that place will definitely play an important part in determining what kind of color contrast one would want to go for. There are certain standards which are related on how to use those contrast, like building elements and information facilities must possess a value of luminance contrast equal to or more than 30% to enable visual detection by people with visual impairment. And safety related elements in public facilities apply minimum amount of luminance contrast ranging from 30 to 60% depending on the type and the size of tactile warnings. For the tactile contrast, mostly TGSI, that is the tactile ground surface indicators, are used, and where the luminance contrast expected is 30 to 70% for people to walk over them safely. Additionally, use of different textures could also bring more clarity to the tactile contrast. The most important aspect in this in the whole contrast is the value contrast, as only 35% of the visual acuity can be identified by the use of color contrast as compared to luminance contrast. So value contrast plays an important role. Value contrast is, so as you can see in the chart that is given on the right hand side, the difference in the brightness differentials between two colors are mentioned, and those above 70% are preferred. So so as the brightness differential increases, the contrast becomes higher and are more legible. Older people perceive color and value of color differently than people who are young and have normal sight. And when people become older, their ability to distinguish blue, green, and green is more difficult than distinguishing red and yellow. So these factors are very important in applying correct design techniques. And as an architect or as a designer, as a lighting designers, it is very important to consider those color combinations that give the best of the contrast. Since we talked about how the contrast works and how blindfold experiment gives you an understanding of the needs and the dependencies of visually impaired people in a surrounding, but how about the whole experience of a space? Because our experience of the world involves a number of senses, and it is usually multi-sensory experience that is determined in a space. And multisensory experience can be further divided into multimodal experience and cross-modal experience, where my research is particularly looking into cross-modal experience, where the operation of one sensory modality influences or makes difference in the operation of other. For example, how light, which is a factor responsible for visual modality, how it influences the operation of other sensory modalities to achieve multisensory experience. So this is exactly where how to achieve a cross-modal experience is a combination of the observations that were noted from the blindfold experiment, like the reference nodes linked to the non-visual attributes of a space, when they are taken into consideration and then they are linked to the application of the correct luminance value and tactile contrast, what we have is a safe navigation and which enhances social interaction. So in this way, when the characteristics of light are used are applied to the non-visual aspects of a space, what we have is a cross-modal experience, which is indeed a multisensory experience. So at the end, I came up with this design module, which is a 4-step design module in determining or deciding how to go for a design process or a design approach of a space should be. The very important thing is to define the prototypical user. So you have to understand that there are different peoples and there are different needs, and no one design principle or one design strategy can contribute to everyone. But there are certain points which can be taken as similar, which are similar and which can be taken as reference points to build your design strategy on. For in my case, I consider people with visual impairment as the prototypical city dweller, because as you see in the graph, the number of people with visual impairment, the numbers are rising day by day, and it is kind of one of the major problems that cities are facing around the world. So it's better that we take into consideration these people before designing or building spaces. You have to learn about their limitations and what kind of impairment, what kind of things are blocking their ways to get a proper knowledge of the prototypical user. When you have this first-hand information about your user, you have to explore what are the potentials of a public space. For example, what are the non-visual aspects of a space as a designer we can look into other than the visual attributes? What are the barriers and the supporters in a site which can enhance this non-visual aspect of a space? And obviously to study the current lighting conditions of a site. The third important thing is to understand needs and dependency. For this, blindfold experiment is a major tool in assessing the non-visual sensory attributes, as it gives you the different attributes of a space which are non-visual, which gives you a clear idea about how other sensory attributes can be used in a design approach. And when these needs and dependencies are considered, and when these reference points are enhanced by light, by taking into consideration the luminance contrast, the value contrast, anti-tactile contrast, what you have is a redefined image of a city. So the needs, the most important idea is when the needs and the dependencies of people are considered, and when those needs and dependencies are taken care with light, which enhances the non-visual aspect, what you have is a multisensory experience. While the final takeaway from the entire research is disability is a condition of space and not the people. Because as one refers to a disabled person, we are actually referring to the certain loopholes in our built environment and not the person. And inclusive design techniques could boost economy by giving all kind of users the confidence to step out and earn a living. Also, by practicing such inclusive design techniques, what we will have is a rich network of well-connected and unrestricted walkable spaces. Appropriate design interventions could also lead to an unbiased sensory experience of a space. And what we have at the end is a more inclusive, a more equitable, and a more just city for all. Thank you for your attention.